Alright, so up to fucking million.
You. And it's episode 18. You know what I'm saying?
Episode 18?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to you about that in a second. You know, it's good to have a player here. Got a couple
So
players.
we live right now?
Yeah, we absolutely live.
Nice.
We don't waste no time. We are live and direct.
Nice. Thanks
Yo.
for having me here, Charles.
Alright, what's up everybody? Y'all already know who I am. Charms Dove, you know, the host, the owner, everything of CHARMScast. Tell them who you are.
My name is Justin. Most people call me J.O., J, whatever you like.
Right.
I am just graduated from law school last year, and I'm in the mix of things right now. Just figuring out what the next step is.
What law school did you graduate from?
I went to Rutgers.
Okay.
I started off in Camden, and then I finished off in Newark.
Oh, you was in Camden?
Yeah, I started off in Camden. It's actually a crazy story how I ended up in law school, but basically, like around the time that I applied, the application rates were down like 15%.
Right.
So if you think about it, it had like I'd say like a funnel effect, where the top schools had less of a demand and it trickled down, right? So schools were in panic mode. They had an excess amount of money
Right.
to give away for scholarships. So I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm the smartest kid in the world or I got the best grades. I got lucky, and that just shows that it's not all about you being prepared at a particular moment, but more so about being prepared at all times, because you never know when that opportunity is gonna strike.
So where you originally from?
I'm from Englewood Cliffs.
Okay. Now you got a story to tell a lot of people don't know about. You know what I'm saying? So could you tell them your story, and when you get into it, I'll be stopping you, to get more into detail, figure out some stuff, because most of the shows people see me, I got like artists or whether people sing, rap, or dance. You're someone who that's not even your league. Your whole thing is your story is kind of like similar to a lot of people in this area, but people may look at you differently because you don't have the same complexion as me. So I want you to tell your story. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So I guess we're gonna start back in 2013 when my life changed forever, I'd say.
Right.
And what actually led me to law school and what led me here today, I'd say. It was 2013. I was in Englewood coming back from New York City. And to keep a long story short, I don't want to get into all the particulars and whatnot. I got into a really bad situation where a cab driver that drove us back, he crashed into a snowbank driving up Palisades over here on the hill.
Right.
And me and my co-D, my friend at the time, we were, I guess, I wouldn't call it panic mode, but we were upset at the situation, the fact that the cab driver couldn't get us home. So we tried to help him push the car out the snow and whatnot. And it ultimately led us getting, frustrated with the guy, just walking off on him. We ended up walking, both our phones are dead. This is like 5 in the morning. And I tried to go to the police station and use the phone over there to call my parents or call somebody that could pick us up or a taxi. And the police officer that was over there, he voluntarily said that he would have a car drive us home. So they drove us home, and I'm thinking the situation's with the cab driver, it's not gonna really transpire into anything. That's the last thought on my mind.
Right.
I'm just mad because this is 2 or 3 hours later, and I'm finally making it back home at 8 in the morning at that point.
Right.
So I'm about to go to sleep, and 2 police officers pull up to my crib, and my parents, they came upstairs, and they were, I guess, they didn't know what the hell was going on. But my mom did have an idea because she was waking up at the time that I came home that night,
Right.
or early that morning, and I told her, I said, look, this is what happened to the cab driver. Couldn't get us home because she couldn't get in contact with me. My phone was dead. So the cops come to my crib. I guess the biggest mistake that could have possibly been made actually happened, in that my dad voluntarily let them come inside because it was still a blizzard outside. And from there, it was just all downhill. Started harassing me about what happened with the situation with the cab driver, this and that. They were telling my parents that they wanted to question me down at the precinct in Englewood. So ultimately, I guess we just, I voluntarily went to the police station because I had no guilty conscience of doing anything, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking that we're talking about, a cab fare or it's a cab dispute.
Something minor.
Yeah, something like very minor. I thought I was gonna go there, pay him whatever amount of money it is, and get in and out.
Right.
But it ended up turning into a whole crazy situation because the police officers told my parents, like, we're just taking him down. We're gonna ask him a few questions and let him go. It's not a big deal.
They always do that bullshit.
Yeah, of course. And my mom's an attorney actually, and she kept asking the cop, "Is my son being arrested?" And the cop kept saying no. So I go outside with the cops after they follow me around my crib while I'm gathering all my belongings from the night before, and they bring me outside.
How were you gathering the belongings from the night before? They asked you to do that?
Yeah, the officer from Englewood, he asked me to bring all the stuff that I had from the night before.
Okay.
So I go outside, and the first thing the officer says to me is, "Put your hands in the back of the car," right? I'm thinking to myself, like, you're telling me I'm not being arrested, but you're putting me in handcuffs? Like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
So they bring me to the police station at Englewood Cliffs first, and I'm sitting in the back of the car with the cuffs in my hands, and I'm looking out the window at the cab driver directly in the precinct. I don't know what's going on at this point. I just know, like, something's got to be wrong, because why am I being put in handcuffs?
Right.
Mind you, the cop told me it was like it was a precaution that they all take. I guess within their police force in Englewood,
Yeah.
like, they put people in handcuffs even if they're not being arrested.
Bullshit.
Right? Yeah. So they put me in handcuffs, brought me to the precinct down in Englewood, brought me into not an interrogation room, but like a little office where they had 2 computers, 2 desks, and like 2 officers just watching me the whole time.
Right.
I had one handcuff on my hand, the other on the, there was like a pipe going along the back.
Yeah.
So I'm handcuffed to this pipe for a matter of 4 hours, and I have a detective from Englewood popping in and out every now and then saying, "Justin, we could get you in and out of here real quick if you, you just tell us what happened." And me, like, I'm no dummy. I know you never talk to the cops regardless, and I'm gonna get into this. This gets pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say something about that later.
I need you to repeat that again, because a lot of people don't know. When the police stop you, what are you supposed to do?
Never talk.
Because a lot of people just, voluntarily, give out information.
Right.
And shit.
You don't have to get aggressive. You don't have to, get confrontational, but definitely don't talk. Especially if you're not in a situation where you don't have to. You don't have to voluntarily say anything. But aside from that, I went down. Yeah. So the detectives asked me to talk to him. I keep telling him I don't want to talk, and I asked him if I could have my attorney present, which I learned later in law school, you have a right to have your attorney present as soon as you ask.
Absolutely.
I was denied that right, as I asked for my mother to come as my attorney. And I didn't know what the hell was going on at the time, but later I find out that she was locked out of the precinct for like 4 hours, basically, trying to get inside. They're giving her the runaround, trying to get me to say something. Now, during that time, while I was in that room for 4 hours, they went and got my co-D, who lived in Fort Lee at the time.
Right.
Now, they went to his crib. Mind you, this kid was an offensive lineman. He played for Bergen Catholic, right? He went on to play college football. They didn't put him in handcuffs. They put him in an unmarked car, right? So whatever they said about the precaution before, throw that out the window.
Right.
They put him in that car. They bring him to the station, and I guess he voluntarily spoke to them. It wasn't. It's not that I guess. I know he voluntarily spoke to them. Now, I'm gonna clear something up here because I don't want there to be any misconceptions.
Right.
But he didn't snitch, so to say, and I say that because, number one, we didn't do anything. Number two, he was trying to clear up the situation because they were asking him questions.
And they twisted his words around.
And I'm gonna get into that later. I keep saying that, but it gets deep. So I'm sitting in there, right? 4 hours passes. They from that point on, after the detective realized I wasn't gonna speak with him, they brought me into a cell, put me in there for another 4 hours. Now, during that time, my mom's finally let inside, like 4 hours later, right? And this is the first time I hear the word robbery. She comes to my cell, and she's like right outside it, escorted by a police officer. And this shit is just too deep, so I gotta take a deep breath.
It's cool.
she was standing right outside, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here, you know? Like, what the hell did they think I did? Why am I here for so long? You know, I thought we were gonna
And
get
this
it
is your
out.
first run-in with the law in life at this time.
First serious one.
This is 2013.
This was 2013, December.
Okay.
And mind you, just a quick, if you think back to the part about my house, the officers, they wanted me to, my mom wanted me to drive down to the police station on my own.
Right.
But the officers were very persistent with getting me to ride with them, right, before they put me in handcuffs. And I'm thinking at that time, like, I was just out the night before. I might have a tiny bit of alcohol left in my system, even though I stopped drinking a long time ago. So I don't even want to play that game, you know, if they're trying to line me up like that. Little did I know, you know, this cab driver came up with this whole story saying that me and my code D robbed him. They said that I was sitting behind him and I apparently choked him, and my friend came across and took money out of his front pocket, $17 to be exact.
So they're trying to say y'all allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
For $17?
For $17, yeah. Charged me with the second-degree robbery. So I'm in the cell at that time, finding out for the first time that's the case, and I just lost my fucking mind. I lost it, as any normal person would, after being put in handcuffs for the past like 6, 7 hours, whatever it was.
Let me ask you this: if the alleged victim, right,
Yeah.
was if the victim at the time was allegedly restrained against his own will, and he went to the police station, wouldn't there be some type of marks or bruises going on?
Exactly. That's the thing. If you look in the police report or even the news article that came out,
Right.
it says that there were no injuries. The victim didn't go to the hospital. They said that there was no drugs or alcohol involved from the officer's observations, and they put that even in the news article. Now the thing is my mother just so happens to be someone that is politically connected, so to say.
Right.
So given her name in that lane, the media exposure that was on my case was like, you know, it was like as much exposure as it could be.
Like a high profile type thing.
Yeah, especially because it gets deeper than that too. You know, there's a lot of like politics gets very dirty. You know, that speaks for itself. But especially in my town, there's a very ugly dynamic going on over there, and I don't want to speak too much on that. But it's just people don't play fair. Those stoop below levels that they shouldn't. And
that's anywhere.
Yeah, that's anywhere. Yeah, so, of course. So I can't take that personally. But we got a lot of exposure, and I ended up getting charged with second-degree robbery. Now, after my mother was in the outside the cell speaking with me, I guess they escorted her out, and they took me in to process me and all that, take my fingerprints, this and that. And mind you, I'm just traumatized at this point because I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know the story at this point. I don't know what I'm fully being accused of and how this even transpired. How something going from like a tiny cab fare could transpire into something so serious as a second-degree robbery. Now, mind you, that's punishable up to a max of 25 years.
Sheesh.
Right? My bail was $25,000. This is something that my parents had to put up. Right? I don't come from a wealthy background like that whatsoever. Anybody that grew up around me can tell you that. So that was like a very big setback. And mind you, around that time, I had a lot of good things going on. I had a mobile app that was on the market. For maybe like 3 months at that point. Right. It was like a top 100 social networking app.
What's the name of that?
It was called Connect Now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a digital business card app, and that shit was like way ahead of its time. So I felt like, I don't know what was going on, but I was just on such like a high that when I crashed and that shit happened and the news had to get all over that.
Now
like a situation that I had to, when you have a situation you have to go through, it's one thing if you go through it on your own. But when it becomes everybody else's, not problem, but something that they could, you know, track and have on their radar.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you don't even know what's going on anymore. Like, people start looking at you different. Even people in your own circle start questioning your intentions or whether you did it or not.
Just because you got to run in with the law.
Yeah, just because you get into a situation like that, and it's like the energy never lies. So for years, I took maybe like 2 years to fully recover from the situation. Probably longer than that, like 2 or 3 years. But
in what manner are you referring to? Is it like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially?
Everything that you just said.
Okay.
Everything. Like the best way I could describe it is think about waking up every single morning with a knot in your stomach, just praying and wishing that the shit was like a nightmare, and it wasn't actually happening, because having to deal with that every day and all the opportunities and potential that I had to make big things happen around that time, it was quiet for all of that after, you know, I caught my case. Now, aside from that, during like the pre-trial procedure, so to say, right?
Yeah.
After I got charged, and after that happened, after the news, you know, highlighted whatever the incident was, the prosecutors wouldn't drop the case. And one thing about Bergen County that I want to make clear to people is, I think a lot of people from like Essex County, Hudson, and Passaic, they'll say that Bergen County is relatively soft because, you know, there's a lot of affluent towns in the area, et cetera, and so forth. But the truth be told, Bergen County is probably one of the most dangerous counties in terms of, I wouldn't say dangerous, that's not the right word. It's just the types of matters or charges that would be dismissed in the other 3 counties that I just named. Those charges won't be dismissed in Bergen. They'll take that all the way because
To the furthest extent.
The furthest extent, that's a little extreme. I mean, they'll take it as far as they can, though. You know what I mean? So I firmly believe that in my situation, where you had no evidence whatsoever, like absolutely no evidence, and as a matter of fact, the alleged victim, he didn't respond to the prosecutors for like 6-7 months.
So how was it an indictment given or passed down from the grand jury if there wasn't enough evidence?
So I didn't get indicted. I
never got indicted.
No, I never got indicted because I got a PTI before. I took PTI before I got indicted. Right? Now, let me tell you something about the indictment. The indictment standard is lower. That's probable cause standard, right?
Okay.
So that's obviously much lower than being guilty for like beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So people get indicted every day off allegations, and, you know, at a state level, I would say, because the Fed's conviction rate is like over 95%, right?
Correct.
But at a state level, their conviction rate is not anywhere as high. So,
what about the I keep hearing that Bergen County has a high overturn rate. When I say overturn, maybe I'm not using the correct terminology, but
turnover rate?
Yeah, per se. If you go to whether it be trial or if you cop out, and then when you get downstate or wherever you get to and you appeal it, they're
it's a quick process.
Not really the process being quick, but like it's very liable that you could come back on appeal due to, I don't know if it's loopholes or whatever the situation may be.
I don't know, but one thing about Bergen County I came to realize is there's a lot of fair judges in the criminal division, because I was actually just working there this past year, up until the end of August for one of the judges over there, criminal judges, and he was the most down to earth, reasonable, kind, genuine person I've ever met. One of the most, hands down. So I know a lot of people have like there's a lot of hostility between law enforcement or even judges and people, but you got to take it on a case-by-case basis and not generalize, because all that's going to do is put hate in your heart and, you know, just make the situation nasty before you even get to know somebody like a judge, right?
Right.
So that's, you know, just a gem that I would throw out there. But one thing I want to say, Charms, is going back to my co-defendant, and the reason why I don't consider what he did as necessarily as snitching or, you know, doing something shiesty behind my back, is because, think about it like this, right? We grow up in the way our society is structured. You know, when you grow up, we're taught if you cooperate, right? And I use that word very loosely. Like, if you cooperate with your teachers or your parents when you do something wrong and you take accountability, then the consequences are less severe, right?
Right.
Well, now when you think about it in terms of a police officer, you know, let's say you have an innocent person in front of him getting grilled questions, and they're just trying to clear their name and be very clear that they didn't do anything, right? They'll twist those words and they'll really try to destroy you off that.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? It's scary, because going back to my case, my co-D, the only things he said to the cops on the interview that they gave him was that I never touched him, because they tried to get him to flip on me, right?
Right.
He was very firm in saying that we never touched him, never stole any amount of money. But the thing is they asked him the same question in so many different ways that any human at that point is bound to give some sort of inconsistency, right?
Right.
It might be very minute or minor, but still, it's an inconsistency. And just based off of that, they could bring up charges against you, and that's like, that's crazy to me. So I say all that to say the situation I went through, it's something that I'm in the process of gaining full closure on, in terms of having it potentially looked at by PI, right, to see what really happened, because I think there might have been, certain things that might have happened behind the scenes. I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not accusing anybody.
Right.
I'm just saying to thoroughly vet it and to make sure that I can vindicate my name, right? I'm definitely going to take those steps, but on a different note, I wanted to just hammer on the point that
Better pull up. Word up.
No, it's just I want to hammer on the point that people think that, especially looking up to entertainers or rappers, right? When rappers come out of prison, or let's say they beat a case and they say, "Oh, I beat my case, this and that." Like, people think that means you could go out there, act reckless, catch charges, and beat the case ultimately. But what people don't consider and take into consideration is the fact that catching charges in itself, if you have to get an attorney, if it's serious, right, that's going to drain your funds, your finances. Just the weight of that on your shoulders and having to deal with that, right, subconsciously, that's not a good feeling either. So it's, oftentimes people are like, I caught a charge, whatever, it's not a big deal. It might not be a big deal in the long term, but you gotta at least be smart and not want to catch that charge, because, having something of that on your record could, in the way that this world is structured, that could definitely hurt you and your career.
So let me ask you something. You caught that charge 2013, right?
Yeah.
The case is complete, right?
It's complete, and I had my charges expunged.
So it's 2019. How long? They say, I thought expungement is 7 years. How does that go?
Expungement, I can't speak. So number one, first and foremost, I'm not technically an attorney yet, so I can't give legal advice.
Okay.
So I got to give that disclaimer. So I'm just speaking as a friend right now. Expungements, I don't know the exact procedure, but I know that I qualified, and I was able to get it completed. This was like 2-3 years ago now.
So you did take the bar?
I took the bar exam, yeah.
Okay.
I took it this past July. I'm anticipating my results within the next month or two. I mean, not month or two, week or two.
Right.
Yeah.
So hopefully, God willing,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not too worried about it. I think it went well this time.
Okay. How many is this is your what time taking the test?
This was my I technically call it my second time taking the test.
Okay. So what if we weren't speaking technically?
Yeah, this is my third time taking the test.
Okay, so we're just gonna go with 3 because we're not into that technical speaking and shit. You know what I'm saying?
No, the first time I took it, like I didn't take it too seriously, to be quite honest with you. I had a lot of personal things going on at that time.
Okay.
So it was something that I wasn't even gonna go in on test day, but I ended up just taking it to get the practice.
So this is your third time. And you know what they say? Third time is a charm. And you on CHARMScast.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's facts.
You see?
Yes, sir.
You see how that goes?
Yeah. No, there was some other things I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss.
Sure, you can tap in on whatever you want. It's all on you right now. How about that? While you thinking, I got questions.
You got questions, yeah.
I definitely got questions. So because I speak things into existence, when you pass the bar, what law are you going to be specifically focusing on?
Okay, so I actually just had a situation that I got out of. I'm not going to get into that too much.
Okay.
But it was basically, it was a firm that covered most of the areas that I'd like to practice. I'm going to be practicing criminal defense, but I also want to be able to do like transactional work.
Okay.
Review contracts, real estate, and build out my own entertainment practice.
Okay.
With that, so helping artists with their trademarks, copyrights, patents, and stuff of that sort.
So you're gonna be doing it. Most of the time you're gonna be flying solo dolo.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
That's it. And I came to realize that the way that I am, ultimately, that's definitely the goal. Having my own practice, setting up shop, and doing my thing, because I can't have a boss in the long run.
So how was Rutgers? How did Rutgers treat you?
Rutgers was good. My experience was different because a lot of students go there and they're focused on studying 24/7, right? And solely focused on that. But I was getting money at the same time. You know, I was trying to do whatever I could to make a quick buck, because while you're in school, you know, you're not able to make as much money as you like.
Right.
So I was just trying to survive, and I worked for a bunch of different firms, had a lot of good experiences between working for AMC Networks, their in-house legal counsel, and working for some of the most prestigious firms in the area.
Okay.
I kept busy, so I was just in and out at school. I was like a commuter.
And that was in New Brunswick.
No, that was in Newark.
Okay, no. So how was Camden?
Camden, I was there for my first year. That shit was different. That shit was different.
Because it's not too far from the hood, right?
It's right there, yeah. We had like a 2x2 block for the school, but outside of that, it's like every man for himself.
And every
That
day
shit was different.
somebody
Yeah.
was getting their shit knocked off.
Oh
every
yeah,
day.
you know, we had the alerts on our phones, so we would get texts all the time when something would happen in the area.
And how frequent were you getting alerts?
Very, very frequently. It was crazy. But regular shit down there.
Just like there's a dead body on the corner of 6th.
Yeah, as long as you mind your own, you know, you're not getting into any trouble.
Would you go back down there? Would you move down there?
To Camden?
Yeah.
No, not Camden, but Philly, maybe.
Okay.
Philly was actually really nice.
So
And-
being that was so close, you would venture off to Philly frequently when you was in school.
Oh yeah, in Camden, yeah. A lot of the students there, they'll go out to Philly and whatnot. But it came down to a point too. My second semester at Rutgers Camden, I was coming back to New York every other weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had an opportunity to work for any firm in Bergen County, what firm would that be?
So I got two different answers
Okay.
because two different reasons. For the sake of, I guess you could say, prestige and working for a big firm, and you know, already walking into a situation where there's clients, and you know, you don't have the burden of bringing in clients, right? You're just kind of walking into a situation where you just got to be able to plug in work and actually sit down behind the desk and get it done. In that sense, having the security of doing that, it'd be probably one of the big firms like a Pashman Stein, or like a Rifkin Radler. But for what I want to do, and for my own growth and my own happiness, it would have to be a solo practitioner, or a very small firm. It would probably be the firm that I used to work for before, for an attorney, Joe Rem, out of Hackensack, one of the best criminal defense attorneys around. Or if I teamed up with someone like Navarro. Because, yeah, absolutely, because I definitely think that I'm a firm believer, number one. Like, I've had so many people tell me, you know, you should reach out to Navarro, talk to him, this and that. But the way that I move, it's always organic. I don't force anything.
Okay.
Because, you know, I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. I don't even want to compromise, like, the energy that you get. You know what I'm saying? Or suppress any potential for things to happen just the way it should happen. So, I've held back on reaching out to Navarro, but I have a lot of people, a lot of friends that we have mutual friends. So he's someone that's I'm probably gonna consider reaching out to in the near future. Not even to necessarily work with, just to pick his brains, because he's someone that's been in the game for a minute now, and his story is inspirational. The way that, you know, it popped off in one summer with Fetty Wap. That was the year that I started law school. So going into it, I was like, wow, someone from my area in Bergen County, you know, made it happen like that. You know, that's inspiration right there.
Yeah, you could be next.
It's motivation, yeah. So, you know, Charms, the way I move, I don't force anything. So I know my time and my day is coming. You know, I'm not in competition with anybody else. I don't watch anybody else. I'm not concerned with that, because ultimately I don't compare my life to anybody else's. I had to sit on the bench for 2-3 years, and you know, had to really struggle, go through a situation where I was like as low as you could possibly be, especially knowing that you didn't do something, right? Like, going back to that, the one thing I want to say also is I never once touched that driver at all.
Yeah.
Like, not even like a pat on the back going in the car, nothing of that sort. So for him to make a story like that and have zero regard for me, have zero regard for my family.
Extremely hurtful.
Yeah, that was extremely hurtful, just from a humanity standpoint. You know, like, how could somebody be like that?
You think he was doing it trying to get some money out the situation?
No, I think it wasn't like money in the sense like he wanted to sue me and get more money. It was in the sense that he just wanted to get the money from that point, you know, just for the ride in itself.
Yeah.
But it transpired into something that he didn't even expect it to transpire to, like a serious charge, like a second-degree robbery. So that's why he was probably ducking the prosecutors for like 6-7 months.
So did you ever get an apology or anything from him?
Nah, nothing.
Dude, that's corny.
Yeah, it's crazy, bro. But, you know, there's moves being made right now to hopefully vindicate my name all the way. But that leads me to my next point in that, you know, whoever's watching this, one message that I would put out there is that oftentimes you're not going to get the full closure that you want in a situation, the way that you want it, you know, to happen. But you got to find other ways to find that silver lining, to have that closure, even if it's not in accordance or not the same thing as what you wanted. Channel that negative energy that you have if you're going through something right now. Everybody's always going through something, right?
That's a fact.
That's a fact. And you can't, you know, make your happiness contingent on certain events, people, or accolades. You know, just be mindful of that. I would definitely say be mindful of that.
So being that, like, you know, soon you will pass the bar, we'll get the results back.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this Amber Geiger situation?
So first off, I haven't researched it as much as I should have, right, to give an informed opinion. But just on its surface, especially with the witness that was killed, you know, I don't know what the hell is going on. But I will tell you something in that people are very quick nowadays in this generation to take what they hear on the news or see on the news, especially scrolling through their phone on Instagram, whatever it may be, and just, you know, taking that as a fact. You got to do your own homework, and you got to, you know, in order to have an informed and respected opinion, you got to definitely do your homework, because a lot of people these days, they'll take something from a non-credible source that has grammatical and spelling errors all over the place, and they'll start posting that around as if it's the truth.
So I'm gonna tell you what I feel, you know, and people can say it's conspiracy theory, whatever the fuck they want to say. Like, he was killed execution style.
Yeah.
That's one. Two, the area in Dallas where they lived at, it's like a Bergen County area.
Is it?
So it wasn't a high on crime. The people who reside in that area are people who have some type of high finances. Right?
Oh, is that right?
You know what I'm saying? So, and the person never had any charges. Joshua Brown never had any charges. So for them to sit there and be like, you know, it was a drug deal going bad, like, come on, like, are you shitting me?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And if it was a drug deal going, what a coincidence! After you testify against the police, the drug deal, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, I feel it's a lot of bullshit with that. Like,
right.
Straight up, like, you know, sugarcoating. I feel it's a lot of bullshit.
It is.
I feel the judge, I think her name is like something Kemp. She's like a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that Joshua Brown was attacked for going against the police department. I feel that Amber Geiger should have gotten more time. And I'm gonna tell you this, for one thing for sure, two things for certain. If Amber Geiger was an African American police officer,
mm-hmm.
and the victim was a Caucasian, the time would have been escalated like it to the max. Like,
yeah.
You feel me? Like,
that's a fact.
And I saw,
no question about that.
I saw a shirt that I think LeBron had on a shirt, right? And it had like different, different complexions of people going down the shirt, and to the far right it was like all the charges were like murder. So
mm-hmm.
the far right was like police officer. It was like administrative leave. And you know what I'm saying? A Caucasian, it was like probation.
Yeah.
Someone of like fair to brown skin, like, you feel me? It was like 15 years. And someone who was dark skinned, it was like life in prison.
Right.
So it's like it just baffles me. Like, you know, one thing I always tell everybody, like, you feel me? I'm so sophisticated, ignorant, like, you know, I know a lot of shit, but it's like my past and shit that I'm into always like grasp a hold of me and pulls me back. So I said to say this, like, history always gonna repeat itself, like, you feel me? Always gonna repeat itself. And it's like this ain't the first African American male that's gonna be killed by a police officer. It damn sure ain't the last. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, it's like it happened in an era, like, how do you feel like for someone to get killed in their own home? It's like,
You know, it's crazy. And the thing with me, Charms, is after going through my situation, right, I was obviously hurting for a long time and thinking like, you know, thinking very sorry for myself, for lack of words, right?
Right.
Like, just objectively speaking, I was like, this is really just flat out wrong, you know, that this case is dragging out this long, that the potential prospects I had to do business with or even get a job at a later point with, right? Everything died out because of the news articles that were spreading, the fake allegations going around, right? But then I realized after starting to go to law school, especially after starting to work for some of the firms in the area, people get convicted, I'm not even just talking about getting charged. People get convicted of things that they don't do, and this is a serious problem. You know, people, false allegations turn into false convictions. And, you know, there's good brothers right now that are upstate. They're never coming back home over things that they didn't even do.
Right.
And this is like a serious problem that we had, that right now people like myself, I'm driven all the way because the difference between me and the majority of lawyers out here is they've never even been through anything as close as any of their clients have been through, or even I have been through, you know? So the relatability between me and a lot of different people is something that I have. And I'm not trying to sound cocky by any means. This is just fact of the matter. That relatability that I have with people is definitely taking me a long way because I can empathize. Lawyers can only sympathize. Empathy comes from experience.
Damn.
I experienced that shit, man. I've been through it firsthand. I had to go to that probation building across from Bergen County for PTI for 6 months.
Yeah.
They put me on PTI after all that crap, after the cab driver never responded for 6-7 months. They were supposed to dismiss that, not drag it out. But that's, you know, it's no hate on my end. It is what it is. You know, people got their jobs to do, their quotas to fill, and, you know, God handles that accordingly. It's just I used to have some animosity in my heart, directed towards the people that were involved in that situation, but my whole perspective has changed, you know?
Because you got to, like, witness it from both sides. Like, at one point you were a alleged criminal, and now you're about to be a lawyer.
It's crazy. And you know what the craziest part about it is? We're talking about 6 years that we're coming up on in December. People to this day, you know, they can't stand the fact that I'm around certain people, or I'm embraced by certain people, or just happy, so to say. And it's like every time, like, hate comes my way, it's like they gotta always bring that situation up. And it's like, to me, Charms, it went from being something that was such like it was like an open wound. You know, I had to keep my Band-Aid on it because if it was exposed to anybody or the air, right, then it would get infected.
Right.
That's the analogy. But now it's a scar that's healed that I would proudly wear on my sleeve. So when people see it, they can form their own conclusions. They could draw whatever conclusions they want, but I know what I had to go through and what I endured and where that scar came from. And nobody can use that against me because I know who I am and who I'm not.
Man, that's dope.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I gotta take you with me on my next motivational speech, even though, like, you know, I did what I did and I knew I was guilty.
And to be honest with you, in the beginning, telling the story, like, I was a little shooken up, I would say, because to have to revisit it and to think about what actually happened, it's traumatizing. Like, PTSD, I know what that is firsthand from that situation. And it's just crazy, man, the shit that it put my family through. And this is what I really want to tell the youth out there, right? There's two things. Number one, when you're out there acting reckless, you have to realize that you're not only jeopardizing your future, right, and your well-being, but also your family and their well-being, right? So you got to really consider catching an arrest, you know, having to get bailed out. Well, now there's bail reform in Jersey, so that's aside from the point, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of expenses involved with it, right? Putting up a sufficient defense, or adequate defense rather, right? And number two, I forgot the second point, to be honest with you. It was very similar to the first point. I just completely blank. I'll come back to it.
So it's cool. So per se, right? I get pulled over, right?
Yeah.
what's a few guidelines like you suggest for me or anybody that gets pulled over?
So
whether they're doing right or wrong.
Yeah, first things first. The no talking to the cops general rule. The only exception to that, well, there's a few exceptions, but when you're in the car, your rights are different, right? If you get pulled over for a traffic violation, right? Traffic, let's say your taillights out, or you swerved over lanes, you get pulled over, right? If the cops tell you to step out of the vehicle, that's something you got to comply with, right? You can't fight that. You gotta comply with that, especially if they have probable cause, because they believe you're under the influence of alcohol, or if they smell pot, whatever it may be. You gotta comply with that.
But let me tell you something, and this is a fact. So, why is it always that their probable causes they smell marijuana?
Well, that's a whole different thing. Especially with minorities, that's a whole different thing, a whole different discussion, and it's. Let's just put it this way. Like, I'm not gonna take a very strong stance and say that something is a fact, but I will say that when it comes to many instances, profiling is definitely a thing. Profiling is unequivocally a thing. No question about it.
In this area?
In all areas.
Why?
There's no, especially, the best thing about this day and age is we have the internet. Social media shows a lot of things that, used to slide under the rug. Nowadays, you see all this crazy shit going on all over the country. It's not limited to one specific area or region. It's a nationwide epidemic, so to say.
Sick, man. So like, I got 2 more questions for you before we get up out of here. So this is what I'm trying to figure out. When going about looking for like a lawyer or anything, like what do you suggest to like people who are charged with any type of crime? What type of lawyer should they look for? Of course, if it's criminal, you can look for a criminal lawyer, but like, what's the credentials, or what would you seek for in a lawyer?
For a criminal defense attorney?
Yes.
So, oftentimes people look at it like if a criminal defense attorney used to be a prosecutor, right, and then crossed to the defense side. Usually people like that because that attorney would have connections within that prosecutor's office, or would have some pull, right? So people often like that. But for me, what I truly believe in is you got to just feel out that energy, just like any other situation, and you got to also know going into it that attorneys gave the same spiel that they're giving you about what they could potentially do. They give that over and over. They mastered it. So you got to be able to read between the lines and see who's really going to put up a fight for you, who really is not looking at your case as just another source of income or another case on their plate, but something that they're actually going to advocate for in a zealous way.
Do you feel there are attorneys that are cop-out attorneys? Have you heard about that terminology before?
Cop-out attorneys? Yeah, I mean, I think public defenders get that rep typically, right? Because they're obviously not paid by the case. They're just given a big caseload. Yeah, there's cop-out attorneys, but it obviously depends on the circumstances of the defendant, right? If the defendant, it doesn't affect their work or their profession to have a misdemeanor or, in this state, disorderly persons, right? Then, in those kind of instances, that's a relatively quick and easy case to dispose of. But actually, I just remember the other point I wanted to say before, Charles.
Yeah.
And this goes out to the youth, whether it's young teenagers, kids, or even like young adults, anybody that's in their 20s still. If you have been through a situation of running with the law, whatever it may be, don't allow that to be your reason for why you need to go on an even worse route to get it. There's other ways to get it out here. You could do it legally and professionally. And the way that I did it, going back to law school, which was actually something that was always part of the plan, but it kind of happened in a very different way, and in a way that I never expected. But don't allow a run-in with the law, deter you from chasing your dreams and becoming something. Granted that you come up out of the situation without a conviction. If you're a juvenile, you get charged. Let's say you're convicted of something small. that's not a big deal because your records get sealed moving down the road when you become an adult. But even if you are an adult, don't let that deter you. If you want to become an attorney and that's something you want to do, don't let a charge, don't let a situation, especially if you didn't do it, stop you, because the way that the character ethics and the ethics board works in New Jersey and in most states is, it's not about having a completely, I guess, trouble-free or normal person, so to say. It's more so about a person saying, being open about whatever they went through in the past and saying, look, I went through this, but I either curbed, this problem that I had, or I came up out of the situation, and it's not like, a pattern of me getting into run-ins with the law, right? You could really become something still. You could become an attorney, so don't let that deter you.
So when you was applying to Rutgers, you had to, of course, state your situation.
Yeah, everything's disclosed, especially with my law school. I had to disclose with character and fitness, right? For the bar application, you got to disclose everything. So, mind you, when I did apply to Rutgers, that was the story that I used, the story that I went through with the cab driver.
As far as your entrance?
Yeah, as far as my they wanted you to write like a quick letter or story about yourself to I forgot what they call it, like a personal statement, right?
Yeah.
So my personal statement, like a lot of people write personal statements like, oh, I would love to become an attorney because I worked in this and that and the third. I came in with the story. My title was the lucky number 17, which is the amount of money that the cab driver said that we stole from his front pocket, as if we knew there was money in his front pocket.
Right.
And I wrote a story about what I had to go through and what I had to overcome and why that's going to make me a great attorney in the long run, because, like I said, empathy comes from experience. A lot of these attorneys can't even put themselves in their client's shoes or understand what kind of, pain or trauma that causes somebody. Talking about cop-out lawyers. Got a lot of attorneys out here not even considering what defendants' conditions are and what's what their family conditions are if they have kids. Right, they don't consider those things. They haven't copped out. You know what I mean? And have something on their record that, they brush off as not being a big deal. But truth be told, once you have a conviction of any sort, there's going to be obstacles. You know what I mean?
Applying for jobs and all that. I'll go through it.
Yeah, it's
do it.
definitely not easy, right? It's not easy, man.
I got big F's on my report card, man. But you gotta be persistent, man.
Yeah, you gotta be smart. And someone like you, Charms, like you'll be good regardless, because what you're doing right now with this podcast, you're ahead of the curve. You have a network, and I can tell you're highly respected, so you're gonna do well regardless. But most people aren't like you; they're not built like you. So having a record of some sort, right? It's gonna marginalize them and box them in, so to say. But there's other ways to do it out here. You know what I'm saying? You gotta. The one thing I want to say is don't let your past dictate your future. Don't let your history dictate your future, and that I mean. Even if you have certain friends growing up, or especially with friends, you have certain friends growing up, don't feel like you're in the wrong if you're starting to feel yourself fall back because you have other priorities. You know what I'm saying? You got to stay focused out here, because when it's all said and done, when you catch that charge, right, no one's paying for your bail, no one's paying for your attorney, and if you go to prison, God forbid, ain't nobody paying your commissary. So that's the realest shit I'll tell you. No one's even going to call you. As a matter of fact, they're going to be violating you left and right while you're in there, not even knowing what's going on out here. I don't want to get into that, but...
I know.
That's how it goes. So
I know both sides of the wall, man.
There's definitely no glorifying, or, there's nothing nothing that I'm going to glorify about that. However, if you have had a past like that and you've been through things like that, you can move away from it, and you can make yourself something. Don't limit yourself, right? That's really all it comes down to. Anybody could become an attorney. It's because people don't realize, like, oh, I had this shoplifting charge in the past, I could never become an attorney. There's no perfect person in this world. That's not what the ethics committee holds you to.
Yeah. That's
not the standard. Wear your scars on your sleeve and be proud of who you are today, because that all had a part in, making you you.
Right.
Just like my situation that I was so, I wouldn't say regretful, but so embarrassed and just like hurt by for the longest time, that ended up being what made me stand out from the rest. and it's opened doors like you wouldn't believe, because the story in itself is so powerful, and I feel like I didn't even tell it the best way I possibly could today.
I think
But
we should write a book on that shit, man.
Yeah, I'm
There
definitely
you go.
gonna have to, because going back to it, Charms, one other thing is, when I started going to law school, right, and you start learning about your constitutional rights, and you're learning about criminal law, you start learning like what a violation is, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like by the Constitution's definition. So when I heard that I was, shackled to a freaking pole in the police station in a room, and then put in a cell for another 4 hours, making 8 hours in total without being able to see my attorney, right? That was a violation in itself. And what's even worse than that is, after my case was done, I reached out to numerous civil attorneys to take up this case because I wanted to sue the police department.
Was that like a 1983 civil suit?
I'm not sure the exact statute, to be honest with you. I'm not sure, but I wanted to sue them. Nobody would take up the case because they were either scared of how that would make them look, or because there was no money in it. And truth be told, by the law and what the law says, there really was no money to be made in it.
Right.
So it was like seeing that a culmination of things between that, the fact that, there's innocent minorities, especially black men, getting convicted every day of things that they didn't do. There is a need for people like me out here. A need for someone like me who's not going to be the guy that's smiling and giggling and laughing with the prosecutor in the courtroom. Someone who's going to really put his foot down and say, look, I'm with my client all the way. And we're not playing games.
You about to be like Proctor from Power. Word up.
I'm not playing games, because Charms, I know the feeling. That feeling is never gonna, that trauma is never gonna go away. You just learn how to cope a little better, and you know how to channel that energy into something positive, right? And for me at that time, it's like when I finally was able to get back on my feet a little bit, and the whole law school thing was looking like it could happen, I started channeling my negative energy into the type of positive that I would thank myself for in the future. And I'm here today.
I appreciate you for coming. And me, I don't know about everybody else. I don't care about everybody else. But me, seriously, I sincerely hope that you pass that bar, because we need younger people like you, especially people who've been through some real shit that, that can empathize to situations. And, I'm here for you. I as soon as I get word that you pass it, yo, forget them other lawyers, they cop-out lawyers. Holla at my boy. I need my referral fee. You know what I'm saying? Let me get mine off the top, my little 10%, and we lit, man. Word up. Then I appreciate you. I swear to God, I appreciate you coming. I wish we had more time.
You, man. We did this on a whim, literally. We spoke, this morning?
Man, they don't even know, man.
Yeah, literally last second, we just winged it.
And I just saw you guys. That was yesterday.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
You see how, you know what I'm saying?
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Hey, yo, everybody, thank you for watching episode 18. You know to be on YouTube soon.
Follow me on Instagram at Justinnovation. JUSTINNOVATION.
He gonna be our lawyer soon. Y'all gonna need him soon. If I was y'all, I would follow him.
Call me with anything. I'll try to help you out.
And make sure you say you found him from CHARMScast so I can get my 10% because I need in. You know what I'm saying? Thank y'all once again for tuning in. See y'all next week. Y'all know what it is.
That was awesome, bro.
Was it? I didn't think I did that well, man.
You did better than me.
Really? I didn't think I